Hey everybody, it's Derek here, coming to you live from the surface of the fucking sun. It's so hot in Ireland today, Jesus Christ. Anyway, we're going to take a look at the news for the 12th to the 18th of July 2021. So probably the biggest news to come out this week was Valve releasing their Steam Deck. And they have once again given me terrible problems in trying to decide whether this device I have beside me is called a Steam Deck or a Stream Deck, but anyway. So quick look at the article itself. It kind of looks like a Switch. It's a little bit bigger. It's about 6 centimeters or so wider than the Nintendo Switch, and it's quite a bit chunkier as well. Dual analog sticks, a D-pad that's in a really weird position, and face buttons that are in really fucking weird positions. And if you didn't know, it was like, if you didn't know that Steam was a product, and there's just a button on it that says Steam and a little port at the bottom, you think, I will press the Steam button and just, why would anybody buy this product? I'm blind now. Anyway, so they announced the Steam Deck, hoping to launch it in, or starting to ship it in December. So basically it is a device that will allow you to play any PC game that is currently on your Steam library, the latest AAA games and such. There's a small kind of dive into it, like its different features and products. You will be able to plug it into a television. You can either use the USB-C port on the top of it and just get like a 2 HDMI adapter and just plug that into your TV, or you can buy the official dock. Doesn't come with the product. You'll have to buy it separately, and the pricing for it is currently unknown at the moment. But again, that's another way to get it. That's another way to get it to your TV or monitor or whatever. And then the USB-C port itself, you'll be able to use a powered hub for a USB-C, so you can plug in various peripherals that way. So if you wanted to use a mouse and keyboard, you could do that. Or if you wanted to plug in a controller that doesn't have the face buttons in a really fucking weird position, you could do that too, I suppose. Which is, if I was going to get the Steam Deck, and I am thinking I will, but probably not like right now, but I probably will get one in the future. That's probably how I'll use it. I'll probably just keep it docked and use it much the same way I currently use my Switch, which is pretty much exclusively docked. Like I can't see me taking this out on the road. Like the Switch is already big enough as a mobile console. This is kind of even bigger than that, and it's kind of silly. But there's some other kind of glamour shots of the Steam Deck. It's an LCD screen, so it's the same type of screen that the current Switch has. So it's not an OLED. So the Switch still has a Switch OLED. At least will have a slightly better screen. Some looks there at kind of the different options. Face buttons have the same layout as the Steam controller and the Xbox controller, so you won't have to learn for a new position for the X and Y buttons. Not clear what some of these buttons do, like what the view button does or what the quick access button does and so on. Not entirely sure what they do. The Steam button, I imagine, just takes you to the Steam OS, so it's running off Valve's OS, like big screen mode kind of thing. It's got dual trackpads to kind of sort of emulate a mouse, I guess. For some PC games that maybe don't have controller support, you could potentially use the trackpads to get around that. Bit of look at the case. Again, I'm pretty sure the case is a separate purchase. This is kind of showing off that you can connect a couple of things in through the USB-C port. So what's probably happened is those two cables will go off into a powered hub, and then the hub will go back into the USB-C. So you can do a 2-player. Like, why on earth you wouldn't have plugged this into a TV to do it, I don't know, but there you go. Then a look at the back. You can see it's got paddles on the back, like for accessibility, and also I imagine you could probably bind those keys for like PC games that have lots and lots of buttons and that kind of thing. It's just a better look at the front cover, and then it's a capacitive screen, so you can type on it in the same way you can with the Switch. It's not mentioned in this article, but the joysticks themselves are also capacitive, so they're going to have the same It's probably the same type of joystick that they have in the HTC Vive, where it knows if your thumb is on the thumbstick, even though you're not moving it, it'll know you're in contact with it. And they could potentially do different things with that, I suppose. Small stuff at the Steam Deck specs. It will probably be 720p on the screen rather than 4K or anything like that. And there's a bit of interview here with Gabe Newell where he basically says, yeah, we're totally gonna support this one, definitely. Not like all our other hardware products where we just threw them out of the truck and then forgot about them. You may or may not remember the Steam controller, which is gathering dust somewhere in somebody's house, I imagine. Then there was the Steam Link that very few people even remember existed, but it was a peripheral that would connect to your PC, and then it would basically have a Wi-Fi allow you to play games remotely on other devices and things like that. I'm not entirely sure who it was for, but that was the idea from it. Then there was the Steam Box, which was, I think a lot of people were hoping is that it was going to be something like this, but like a self-contained PC or a console, more or less, a Steam console kind of thing. But what it eventually ended up being was that it was just a brand that other PC manufacturers could put on their PCs and just call them Steam boxes. That kind of died pretty fast. And then there's the HTC Vive, which is a really good VR unit, but it's not really used that well. It's pretty much just Half-Life Alyx and a handful of indie titles that it's properly being supported with. Otherwise it doesn't really separate itself out from the other VR titles. So it remains to be seen how well Valve will support the Steam Deck. I hope so. I hope it will, because it's certainly getting a lot more I was gonna say it's getting a lot more fanfare than the other products, but the Steam Box got a lot of fanfare as well until it was revealed it was basically just a label slapped on a bunch of other PCs. Anyway, Eurogamer's Digital Foundry go into like a pretty deep dive in the specs. If you're really interested in it and you're technically minded, you can check that out. They basically compare it to a Series S, which is the low end model of the Xbox Series, and it is kind of favorable towards it. It's even a tiny bit less powerful than that, but it is comparable to you having a handheld Xbox Series S, basically, is where they're getting into it, but without being able to look at the full deal, having the actual hardware themselves. They can only really speculate based on the specs and the spec teardown itself. Despite Valve attempting to prevent scalping, there's just so many entries already out on eBay going for like $1,000 or upwards even of $1,000. The Steam Deck itself has a couple of different models ranging from $400 to I think $800 is the highest level, and the only real difference is the storage. That's it. There's no real difference otherwise. But either way, Valve did attempt to sort of curtail scalping by kind of forcing a registration fee or like a deposit, if you like, to take it down. So I think you can't just come in and pre-order it for free. You need to put down like $5, but that didn't really stop them because they're still there. Now for their part, eBay, very different, came back on their update to basically say that every single one of these entries violates their pre-sale policy, and that you cannot put something up for pre-sale unless it's going to ship within 30 days. And December 2021 is more than 30 days away. So all of these entries will be taken down off eBay, but obviously the deposits on valve.com are still there. If you want to check it out, obviously yourselves, you can just go straight to Valve's site. Just go to Steam and go to the Steam Deck and make a deposit yourself if you're interested in it. And then a very small wrinkle that I imagine will be ironed out before it's actually released, but it may or may not be able to play some of the more popular titles that are currently on Steam. So this kind of boils down to the fact that Valve OS runs on Linux, and Linux, out of the box at least, is shit for playing video games. It's the same reason you don't. Well, one is it's the reason you don't see many games for Linux. It's the same reason you don't see many games from Mac OS, because Mac OS, if you dive down deep enough, is also Linux. So the way Valve have gotten around that in the past is they developed Proton, which is a kind of, it's like a big collection of tools that you would have to seek out yourself if you were running on Linux. So stuff like Wine and DXVK, a bunch of other things that you would need to combine. So Proton is basically just a way for Valve to just do all of that for you, so you don't have to go look for it. But some games don't work on Proton, and those games are the 4 of Steam's 10 most popular games: Destiny 2, Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege, and PUBG are borked, according to ProtonDB. So if you try to play them on Valve OS, they will launch and then quickly crash, almost immediately. Valve have said that for the deck, we're vastly improving Proton's game compatibility and support for anti-cheat solutions by working directly with the vendors. So, working directly with Activision, Riot, Ubisoft, China for these games to get them to run on Proton. But also, the Steam Deck is itself basically a PC, so if you really wanted to, you could instead resort to the time-honored Linux compatibility workaround: just install Windows. I am actually very curious to see how well the kind of open format of the Steam Deck works, because it is pretty much a PC, and since it is running Linux, you could do whatever the fuck you want with it. It's the same reason Sony dropped the Linux compatibility on the PS3, just because they basically had just given you a pretty powerful PC at the time. So lots and lots of workarounds possible there. Anyway, so a few updates. So Summer Games Done Quick happened last week and raised about $3 million, almost $3 million. It was for charity. It was a really cool event. There's some really fun speedruns. Probably some of the ones that are highlighted here is the GeoGuessr one, where was able to, extremely accurately and extremely quickly figure out where he was in GeoGuessr. It was very impressive. The Pokemon Black and White run was really good too, because it just really came down to the wire on that. One that I really liked that's not mentioned here was the Demon Souls remake speedrun, where they actually used the PS5's help and tips features to just shatter the game. It was very, very cool. And there were loads and loads of speedruns, because they didn't have the same kind of teardown, because it was all virtual, so they could just swap and swap and swap. It was really well done. Anyway, and all for charity, so that's great. And then kind of out of nowhere, Nickelodeon, the Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl game just sort of came out of nowhere and just showed off a bunch of Nickelodeon characters. And it's basically going to be like a Super Smash type deal, where you have Powder Toast Man and Sandy Cheeks. I couldn't think of her name for the moment. SpongeBob, the Turtles. I think Thornberry is in here somewhere. Thornberry even. Real Monsters, there he is. Nigel. And so on. All of these characters. And that's just like a handful of them. I imagine Avatar will probably make its way in there too. Maybe a bunch of Toonami stuff. Probably they won't get the Teen Titans just because DC. I imagine they'll have to be Nickelodeon owned properties, which is a bit of a shame. There's Reptar. Brilliant. Anyway, that just sort of came out of nowhere, and there were a considerable number of memes all over the place, and I just thought it was really interesting. There's an article here on how the game dev Ludosity thought it was a scam at first when Nickelodeon reached out to them, but turns out it wasn't, so that might be interesting to check out. And some news on some delays. So Resident Evil Reverse, which was meant to be an anniversary game, is going to ship to 1 year after the anniversary instead. So it's actually been delayed a couple of times now. It was meant to come out with Resident Evil Village, but it was then delayed to July, and it's July now and still not out. So there was a tweet kind of in like just right before it was meant to launch where they basically said no, it's going to come out next year instead, and no firm date for when it's going to come out. It's going to come out some stage next year, which is it's typically industry code for this game is really shit, and we really need to work on it. There's some really bad things have happened here. Now, it's not that big a deal. I mean, it's meant to be an anniversary title and it's gonna miss the anniversary, which obviously isn't great, but you know, a delayed game is eventually great, hopefully, so probably don't rush it out. Codes for the game did ship with Resident Evil Village, so Capcom were basically saying either hang on to the codes, you know, keep them somewhere safe, or just redeem them right now so you'll be able to play the game when it is eventually shipped. Also, the game itself is free, so you can't really be too annoyed that it's been delayed, but still. Delays aren't always fun, but that game looked fucking rough as fuck, so probably for the best that they have. And then last thing for some updates, Ghostwire Tokyo has been delayed into next year as well. Again, lots and lots of games are getting delayed, mostly because of COVID, basically. It's just impacting development times and pipelines and that kind of thing, trying to keep everybody safe and so on. So Tango Gameworks have basically said, we really want the game to come out, but also we want to protect the health of everyone at Tango, and our new release window will give us time to bring the world of Ghostwire to life as we've always envisioned it. So it's fine. Like, there are so many games that I still have not got around to playing. I'm absolutely fine with a delay. That is perfectly fine with me. One interesting wrinkle, though, that this will kind of throw up is that Microsoft bought Tango Gameworks recently. It was part of the Bethesda merger or acquisition. They got Tango Gameworks as well, along with Arcane, Ghostwire Tokyo, and Deathloop. Shit. I just wanted to highlight it. Didn't actually want to go there. Anyway, Ghostwire and Deathloop. Ghostwire and Deathloop are currently PlayStation console exclusives, timed exclusives. While Deathloop did get a small delay to later this year, which will probably put the eventual Xbox release into 2022 at some point, with Ghostwire being delayed to 2022, the actual exclusivity deal also gets pushed out, so Xbox and PC players probably won't see it until 2023. So not great for them, at least, but what can you do? A lot of games are being delayed. Like, there's a bunch of them that VGC point out here. Gollum, Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok. I don't think anyone's particularly cares that Gotham Knights is being delayed, and Hogwarts can fuck off. But anyway, lots and lots of games are getting delayed, so it's not unsurprising, exactly. Okay, new releases this week. So this is a title, Where the Heart Leads, which I have kind of highlighted a couple of times anytime it's kind of showed up on State of Plays or Indie Roundups and things like that. It is a heavily branching story where you are basically taking control of this guy as he more or less just relives key moments in his life, and he can attempt to make different choices, and the choices he makes will, you know, snowball into other choices, and it can drastically change his life for the better or for the worse or whatever, you know, lots and lots of different changes. So it's a very heavy narrative title that's just released on Tuesday, I think. So that was kind of a stealth release because I thought it was coming much later in the year, but pretty cool. I am actually interested in showing this one off on the channel, and hopefully it is Let's Play and or stream friendly. There are a lot of games that I think I really want to show off on the channel, and it just turns out that they just don't make for good videos. Just good fun to play, but just not fun to watch, I suppose is the way to look at it. But anyway, that's Where the Heart Leads. Then another title I've been kind of showing off. Streets of Rage 4 is getting its Mr. X Nightmare DLC, which is a pretty massive content extension, I guess, for Streets of Rage 4. It's adding a bunch of new characters, a bunch of new areas. So you get to play as the bosses of the base game. Some of these characters I really wanted to play as. There's a horde mode. There's a bunch of new weaponry, and there is new story stuff as well added on top of it. So basically, if you already like Streets of Rage 4, and I don't see why you wouldn't, because it's really good. It's just more of it, you know, plenty more. I forget if it is free or if you have to pay for it. I think it's like a €20, €10 something thing. I probably should have checked beforehand. Okay, so there is a free update thing, so that would probably suggest that the Mr. X Nightmare part of the update is probably you need to pay for it, but there are other free updates. Anyway, Streets of Rage 4 is really good, so definitely give that a look if you haven't yet. Plus you can kill people with a swordfish, which is always fun. And then last new release, or at least not new release that I particularly care about, Skyward Sword HD. So Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD is getting a release on Switch with a lot of quality of life improvements. Basically, it's kind of toned down the motion controls significantly. So you have like a free camera, like free rotation camera on the right analog stick and so on. Upgraded visuals, other things, I don't know. I can't necessarily say because I never played the original Skyward Sword, so I'm not entirely sure how much of it is quality of life improvements and how much of it was just in the main game, or how much of it they had to just change because you don't have a nunchuck anymore. But either way, I'm pretty excited to play this. I know Skyward Sword gets kind of a bad rap, and that's mostly because of its motion controls, so hopefully with the motion controls taken away, or at least drastically reduced, people might decide to like it a bit more. But I've never played it, and it's a Zelda game, and Zelda games, even when they're bad, they're still usually pretty good. Okay. Everyone's favorite part of the weekly news recap, the part where we get irrationally angry at the industry that makes the things that we really like. I still haven't got a proper quip for going into industry bullshit. I really should work on it. Anyway, it's past time. We're all backed up, and it's really past time that we shit on Google Stadia. So Stadia has announced a bunch of new revenue schemes for its developers. They had a developer keynote earlier in the week. But it boils down to them, basically they're trying to really boost their subscription offers, their paid membership offers, versus buying singular titles, that kind of thing. So what they're going to go with is an 85% revenue split for titles sold after the 1st of October until the end of 2023, and up until the first 3 million is earned, which is, as is pointed out here, it's basically the App Store and Play Store policy for new apps, which is will give you a fairly generous revenue cut up to your first X amount of money, and after that you'll be lumped into the 30% group with everybody else, which is to basically incentivize developers to make new things over and over instead of relying on the same instead of relying on the one title to make all your revenue. It attempts to at least incentivize developers to make new titles. How well that's working, you can probably see for yourself, as it's pretty much impossible to find anything good on either of those stores. But anyway, but then kind of their bigger one is that they will be moving to a 70% share of Stadia Pro revenue, and then whatever that may be, it's like 70% of zero is still zero. So any developer who adds their games to the subscriptions catalog, they will receive payouts per session day, which is per calendar day. So basically, if your game is played that day, you'll get money. That's not a great way to think about video games. That's a lot closer to a film and TV pricing structure, or revenue structure rather, in that it's number of views is what they're going for that kind of thing, and they're sort of trying to shoehorn that into video games and have number of plays. Number of people playing the game, I guess, which really incentivizes long, grueling, grinding games, because you'll get people to log in every day to do their 4 daily quests or whatever, and then they'll log off. You know, versus a really well done narrative title that only takes an afternoon to finish, and you're not going to log into that again the next day because you finished it. So it doesn't incentivize, you know, really artistic narrative developed titles. It incentivizes games that can really, really draw out the gameplay, like really stretch it out to the point that you can't even see it anymore. It's so thin, but you're forced to log in every single day. So it's not a good way to look at video games. It's not a good way to do a revenue deal, in my opinion. But either way, this is also kind of Google trying to get its other developers to sort of come back to Stadia and to like continue making games for it. But I really don't like the paying per session day structure, because it incentivizes the wrong type of game, in my opinion. These are not the type of games that I would want to play. These are like Candy Crush style stuff, or you know, live service type titles where, you know, you need to log in every day to accrue the currency or whatever, and you need to log in every week to get the next latest gold dildo or whatever. It's not the same as logging in to play something like God of War that you could probably finish in a week, Resident Evil that you could finish in a day. You know, titles that when people look back on the history of video games, the games they jump out to are not these games you log in to play every single day. You know, they jump back to Super Mario Brothers, Street Fighter. Okay, Street Fighter you might log in to play every day if you're really into it, but like Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, Shadow of the Colossus, you know, these aren't games you play every single day. You play them for a week, maybe less than a week, maybe 2 weeks, you know, but you're not in there every single day, every month out of the year. You know, you're not doing that. So it really incentivizes more of the mobile style games, which, you know, it's meant to be a console. These are, I don't know, these are not the kind of games that they want to incentivize. And they even kind of say that like Stadia was a really solid place to play Cyberpunk 2077. Even at that, Cyberpunk 2077, even with all the crashing and the bugs and whatever, you finish it in 2 weeks, right? At most. And I'm not talking like if you obviously sat down and played it all in one go and didn't sleep and didn't eat and didn't shit and so on, finish it in like 3 days or whatever. It's that amount of hours. But I'm talking like you need to fit in work and, you know, you need to eat and so on. 2 weeks. You know, even that developer wouldn't get it for session day. So I don't know. In my opinion, it's a bad. It's a good deal for developers who have those kind of games, but it's a bad deal for developers who have, you know, are focusing on more narrative-driven things. Anyway, so a couple of things about EA and FIFA. So first kind of shit thing is FIFA 22's standard edition doesn't come with a free next-gen upgrade. So this is a change from FIFA 21. So FIFA 21, I think it's pointed out here, owners of PS4 or Xbox One versions of FIFA 21 could upgrade to the next-gen versions at no extra cost, regardless of which version they bought. Now, if you want to upgrade to, if you buy FIFA 22 on PS4 or Xbox One, you will have to buy the Ultimate Edition, which is $100 if you want to then play it again on PS5. Like, this is a massive difference. $60, $100, and still trying to claim it as a free thing. Here's the difference laid out. I think this looks like it was taken from the PS4 store. Don't know. Anyway, like, these are the differences between them, and down there at the bottom it says dual entitlement. I know, obviously it's taken from the Xbox One because it says Xbox on it. Dual entitlement, free Xbox Series upgrade. It's not free. You're paying €40 for it, or $40 for it. That's not free. That's money. Like, if they want to say, right, basically all the other shit, right, limited time offer, ones to watch player item, whatever the fuck that is, early access, FIFA points, and so on. They've gone out of their way to say that they don't have monetary value. Right? It's kind of their way of getting around the whole gambling thing, is to have middlemen and that kind of thing. So these digital items, FIFA points would have monetary value because you can straight up buy them for real money, but the rest of them you have to get FIFA points or FIFA bucks or coins or whatever to buy them. So they're not worth anything. So our 4,600 FIFA points, are they $40 or are they much less than that? And then the dual entitlement free upgrade is the actual $40. Like, it's not a free upgrade because you're paying a shit ton of money for it, but also, why the change? Why did they change their mind here? They decided to change their mind for some reason, and that reason, of course, is money. Why else would there be a reason? Also, I do think it's kind of funny here that the standard edition is $60 or £60, but the ultimate edition is $100 or £90. What happened to the exchange rate here? The exchange rate doesn't just go, it's all the same up until 60, and then it changes. That's not how money works. Anyway, shitty business practice from EA, which is not exactly surprising. But there you go. It's just very obvious nickel and diming. If you want to buy FIFA 22 on PS4 and then are planning to upgrade to PS5, you will have to buy it again, basically. Whereas most other games these days are saying you get an actual free upgrade. So anyway, but we're not done. We're not done with FIFA. A giant cryptocurrency farm in Ukraine that contained thousands of PlayStation 4 consoles was actually a FIFA bot farm. So this is a kind of story that was put out a bit earlier this week. So this is in the Ukraine. You can see a bunch of PS4s racked up. But what you can also see over here on the left-hand side is these are all game discs that are sticking out of the console. And not only that, they all appear to be the same game. And that game is, you guessed it, FIFA. FIFA 21, I believe. I don't think they go into it, but I'm pretty sure it's the FIFA 21 game disc. Here's another look at the warehouse. Just a bunch of PS4s all networked together. PS4s were being used to grind FIFA Ultimate Team. 3,800 game consoles. So why did they think that this was a bot farm and not a cryptocurrency thing? Basically, game console is not particularly great at doing cryptocurrency. That's not really what they're for. You would have instead expected to see just a big server farm instead, with a bunch of GPUs all series together. But instead, there were a bunch of games consoles instead. So, Ukraine business newspaper Dilo were kind of skeptic of the idea that this was for cryptocurrency, and they kind of thought, this is probably for something else. And plus the fact that they could literally see that there are game discs sticking out on the side there. They looked into it and they're reasonably certain, and there's a fair amount of evidence to back it up, that this was for Ultimate Team. This is a black market for selling accounts loaded up with in-game currency. The SBU, or the security service for Ukraine, have not commented on, whether it's for cryptocurrency or whether it was for grinding out Ultimate Team. I imagine because they don't want EA to give them shit, but whatever. The rest of the article kind of highlights the different ways that you can legitimately get like currency and in-game items or whatever. You can use your real-world money to attempt to buy loot boxes, and cross your fingers and maybe you'll get the thing you want, but the odds are you won't get it. Basically, it's just not going to happen. You can play the game for years as has come up on the channel before, there was a news story that like if you actually wanted to legitimately buy the best players without having to go through loot boxes, you would actually have to play the game well past its shelf life to actually pull it off. Or you can just buy foot coins on the black market, which is basically what this thing is set up to do. You can just buy the foot coins for considerably less time and effort than will be required if you actually wanted to buy it. It's pointed out here, foot coins on the black market, get about 40,000 foot coins, couple of quid, versus months and months and months of grinding. You know, which one do you want to do? And then the best current rated card player in the market at the moment is around 1.5 million foot coins. Jesus Christ. And that's even in the auction house. It's not even... Anyway, this just highlights that the whole foot thing is broken. That this kind of shit is required for it to be in any way usable. You know, like the legitimate way of going about it is just not tenable for most people, that they are willing to just straight up buy useless currency to get around us. It's like, it's bad luck. Bad luck. Not that we didn't know that already, but you know, bad luck. Okay, gonna shit on Ubisoft again. We still have some left from Stadia. So French Union, Solidaires Informatique, which have come up a couple of times now on the channel, have made good on their threat to issue a lawsuit to Ubisoft. So they announced their intention. It first announced, it being Solidaires Informatique, announced its intention to file suit a year ago. This was basically like right after the wave of harassment and toxic work culture allegations were made against Ubisoft. So they basically said, so Solidaires Informatique, if you're just coming into this is the very first video, they are a tech union, French tech union. So they're basically taking the suit on behalf of their own workers, their own union members, to attempt to hold Ubisoft to account for its just complete neglect of its workers. Solidaires Informatique believes the publisher is guilty of putting in place, maintaining, and strengthening a system where sexual harassment is tolerated because it is more profitable for the company to keep harassers in place excuse me, than to protect its employees, which we have seen. They kind of just move people around. We've had the latest Assassin's Creed Infinity merger looking thing where it's harassers are giving, or alleged harassers are now having access to even more of the Ubisoft team, and basically the other employees are like, no thank you please. Solidaires, so they've highlighted a couple of people, Hascoët, Cornet, and Francois, who have all either been moved around the company or have left after the allegations came to light. The only person named in the lawsuit who is still working for the company is CEO Yves Guillemot. So Solidaires Informatique say Guillemot is named because the CEO should be held responsible for what happens at the company, which is fair. You absolutely, if the buck stops there, you should have done something. As much as they can say considerable progress has been made, evidently from what we heard from the Assassin's Creed Infinity story, the background on that, your considerable progress has not been good enough. When Ubisoft were reached out for comment, they basically said, we do not have further details regarding the claim filed against Ubisoft because it's a lawsuit and our lawyers told us to shut up, so we're shutting up. Which is, par for the course. It's correct. It's what you do. Listen to your lawyer. Okay, so this is kind of somewhat rumor, somewhat speculation, and somewhat legitimate story, but Netflix gonna be doing games soon, maybe. So, a Bloomberg report, Netflix is planning to add games to its subscription service sometimes within the year. This is bolstered by the fact that they recently hired Mike Verdu, formerly of EA Mobile Games and Facebook Oculus Games, as Vice President of Game Development. So, that's their title. seems likely. The fact that he has a President of Game Development title potentially suggests that Netflix might be getting into actually developing and publishing its own games, maybe based off its own first party stuff, like, you know, like a Stranger Things game obviously makes sense, but I don't know. I don't watch enough Netflix to remember the rest of their first party stuff. But I'm sure people who watch a bit more Netflix than I do could probably come up with a few more. There's also been, like, there have been a number of games to TV to movie deals with Netflix recently. Like, Capcom just released their Resident Evil Infinite Darkness thing with Netflix, which was terrible. There's the Castlevania series, which is actually pretty good. And then there's the Witcher series, which I suppose technically it's the books that are being adapted, but, you know, most people know the game probably more than they know the book. Anyway, the company doesn't currently plan to charge extra for the content. It doesn't currently plan to charge extra for the content. It will instead just increase your subscription by X amount for arbitrary reasons. Netflix executives have no doubt been looking at Microsoft's growing success with the Game Pass platform and thinking, yes, this is something that we too could be doing and making millions/billions from, just like Amazon have done and fucked up, and just like Google have done and also fucked up. This is good news for Netflix shareholders, I guess. Yeah, it's like, do we really need another subscription service for video games? Like, how many of them really work? Game Pass is about the only one that has ever worked. Amazon's one, I forget what it's even called. And Google Stadia, we've just shit on. It's alive and well. No, it isn't. It's fucking dying. Like, I don't know why Netflix think they will suddenly triumph where considerably more moneyed companies have absolutely dropped the ball. Don't know. It's also highlighted here that sorry, I just have to remind myself what the actual paragraph is about. It's basically going down the lines of looking at the kind of revenue made from these kind of games, probably basing it off Game Pass's revenue stuff, that it's looking at the amount of time people play those games, what games get played, and so on. The fact that Google Stadia have also just taken out the whole we'll pay you based on how often your game is actually played versus how good your game actually is, and so on, and then coupling that with Netflix's own obsession with how much people are watching their shows, and they killing off shows that aren't doing well for them. You know, it's kind of debatable how well or how supported their own first party games, if they make them, would be. So, you know, you might get a Stranger Things the game, and if it doesn't do well, doesn't do numbers for them, then they just pull it from the service. So there's definitely a question around games preservation and subscription services in general. There's a question around games preservation because you don't have access to the source. I mean, you never really have access to the source, but you don't have access to a copy of the title that is not held by the service owner. What I mean is, you don't have the disc, right? You don't have the hard drive with the game on it, etc. It's sitting in the cloud somewhere. You know, you don't have that, so you can't transfer ownership of that to an archival company or a museum company or whatever, which is a problem, because if it just gets taken off the server, that's the end of it. It's gone. So from a game preservation standpoint, subscription services aren't all that great. And then some kind of data mining deep dive into Netflix app data has found this image, which is, as you can tell, that's a PS5 controller, and a couple of references to Ghost of Tsushima, a logo that says N Games, which could potentially be Netflix games, and a shark icon. And data miner Steve Moser claims that the shark is the code name, if you like, for Netflix's gaming thing, whatever it is. And it states that the presence of PlayStation imagery couldn't indicate a partnership between Netflix and Sony. And then the rest of this article by Chris Scullion kind of points out that there already is a partnership between Netflix and Sony. They have a partnership for their Sony motion pictures stuff, in that Netflix has kind of exclusive rights to show those films for a good while. It's a couple of years that they'll have that for. And then they also have excuse me. I should have brought a drink with me. Throat's getting dry now from all this talking. They also have a deal for, they get first look or first purchase or first rights look or something for new Sony films up to starting 2022. Starting next year, they get a first look at Sony films and whether or not they want to with Sony animation films. I should really have read this properly. So that's like Into the Spider-Verse was them, like that kind of thing. The upcoming Uncharted movies. The Uncharted movie isn't animated. This is weird. They have a deal with animation and they have a deal with just pictures. So both. I was right the first time. They get a first look at probably the Uncharted movie and anything else made by Sony, not necessarily PlayStation, just in general. So if they already have an existing deal with a Sony subsidiary, Sony Pictures Animation, it makes sense that, you know, they know people who could get a deal with Sony PlayStation as well. So, you know, it's not completely outside the realm that they could have it, but again, this hasn't been confirmed. Normally I don't do rumors and shit, but this one seems, I was gonna say it seems legit, but maybe it actually probably doesn't now that I'm thinking about it. But it could be interesting. Sony does have its own game subscription service, PlayStation Now, which is shit. Like almost every game subscription service is. The ones that allow you to download the game are usually fine because you can just download them and then you're fine. PlayStation Now does allow that for some of the games. You can't download any of the PS3 games. You can download their PS4 games, and there's like a small subset of the PS2 games you can download. It doesn't give you any PS1 games, and there are no PS5 games on it either. Game Pass, I think, actually I'm almost certain Game Pass allows you to download your games, so that's fine. Stadia does not, which is why it's so bad. So it is pointed out later on in the article that from an Axios report from Stephen Totillo that Netflix are planning to offer downloadable games rather than game streaming. So that will get them around Stadia's failings and Amazon's failings in that, you know, you could straight up download the games. So that would be better. But again, it's something to look at. Potentially Netflix aren't just going to develop their own titles. They'll go into partnership with other game companies or game publishers potentially and just use it as another store or as a subscription service. They can leverage the Netflix install base, which would be considerably higher than the PlayStation install base, so get your games to more people. And kind of Sony higher up management have been stating that they are interested in moving their first party stuff to more people. That's like getting the games out on PC, and then if that's the case, getting the games onto Netflix as well. That's another avenue they can go down. Okay, last bit of industry bullshit. Capcom promises to improve Resident Evil Village PC after fans highlight DRM impact. So there was a fan hack, if you like, or a mod for Resident Evil Village on PC that basically stripped out the DRM. That was it. So a crack. And it had been doing the rounds, not just because it got rid of the DRM, but because the game behaved so much better without it. Like, it did not have any frame rate issues, it didn't have any clipping issues, no VSync issues. It ran at a really nice, smooth frame rate, like really, really good. And it just highlighted how DRM fucks over the customer and does nothing to the pirate. Now it's so much better. And it's just really, really bad that DRM can fuck over the game so badly. And the only people it impacts is like the legitimate player, legitimate customer, not the person who's cracking it. And obviously it comes back to de novo anti-tamper, because it always comes back to de novo, because they're like top of the market, I guess, for DRM stuff, but they're also, you know, top of the blacklist for PC players, because anytime it's in a game, the game runs like shit. You know, it's only when it's actually cracked and removed that the game actually works properly. The typical reason for that, and why isn't this caught by QA? Why isn't this caught by testing? Why isn't this caught by the developers? Why wasn't this caught by certification and so on? The problem is anti-tamper stuff, right? When you are trying to make a build of the game, the latest development build of the game, and you want to send it out to your testers, you want to send it out to QA or whatever, you tend to remove the anti-tamper stuff, the obfuscation stuff, all that stuff that's designed to like prevent hooks and hacking and that kind of thing, because you know it's an internal thing and you don't have to worry about it because it's only ever going to see testing. You know, they're the only people who are ever going to see it. Plus, it's not the final version of the game, so who would want it anyway? So they get through all the testing procedure with never turning this on for the release version, usually, because it's too slow. You know, it's just bottlenecks, production having to build with the anti-tamper stuff in place, and also they mightn't even have a deal with Denuvo yet at the time of development. So, you know, that kind of thing is usually only much later in the pipeline when you're actually getting ready to make the game go gold and so on. So testing and QA basically never see the game with the DRM on. So from their point of view, game runs great. Yeah, there are no problems. We're all good. Or no problems that development is willing to fix, which is what is usually the thing, because QA will always find a problem. Always. That's why you pay them, because they will always find a problem. Now, whether you're arsed fixing that problem, debatable, but they'll always find an issue for you. But whatever, they get the green light, game goes gold, then upper management flick the Denuvo switch. And maybe they get like a little shakedown of the game, you know, a shakedown run. They run the first area or so and go, yeah, it's fine, no issues. And then they ship it, and then once it hits the masses, you find out that no, it runs like shit actually with DRM on. So Capcom have basically come out to say, okay, we'll remove it. It's a problem, so we'll remove it. And as highlighted in the article here, they had the same issue with Devil May Cry 5 on PC. And when they did finally remove Denuvo DRM, drastically improved frame rate, up to 20 FPS improvement. Like, what kind of crazy bottleneck is Denuvo DRM putting on the game that you get this kind of improvement just from removing it? It's also removed it from Resident Evil 2 in a post-release update. So basically, the Denuvo DRM thing is mostly there to... It's not really there to stop cracking, because as has been plainly put out here, cracking is going to happen no matter what. Your PC game will get cracked. It's going to happen. Denuvo and such like things are mostly there to just prolong the amount of time it takes to crack the game, so that you get the maximum launch window. So like people can't find a cracked version of your game because it's taking so long to crack, and they get annoyed and they're impatient. They want to play the game right now, so they just go and buy it legitimately. And that's kind of what they're banking on for PC stuff, for DRM, is that you just either, one, you'll get people who will buy it no matter what, fans of the title, or people who really want to play it, or me, or you just want to play the game, they're going to pay for it legitimately, and they're not expecting anti-piracy DRM to fuck over the game. You'll get people who are like, I'll wait for the crack, and like it's day 2, still no crack, day 3, still no crack, day 4, still no crack, and they're seeing tweets about the game, they're seeing big vampire mommy, and they want to play the game, so they're like, alright, fuck it, I'll just buy it, and I'm sure it'll get cracked eventually, and I'll just play the cracked version then. That's kind of what they're banking on, and it works for the most part, but the game does get cracked eventually. Like there's no such thing as an uncrackable or uncracked PC game. So it's just that the DRM shit tends to just fuck over paying players, is all. Okay, we'll finish off with some dumb shit. So, military game fan leaks classified documents to win forum arguments. So, classic classic internet forums are just awash with fucking crazy people and stupid shit, and people will do absolutely anything to win an argument online. So the crux of this is that there's a particular tank, the Challenger 2, which is, I believe, this tank. One of the players, Fear Not, basically kept writing into Gaijin Entertainment to say, there are specifications on this tank that aren't correct in game. I really like this tank, and I really want you guys to make it so that it's as accurate to the real world thing as you can, because if it was really accurate, it would be the best tank in the game. And he's like, I'm just trying to point out the places where things are incorrect so that they can change it. And to do that, he dropped in documents from the official Army Equipment Support publication for the Challenger 2 tank, which is classified. So it's a classified military document that he has access to somehow, which leads people to believe that he's probably part of the Royal Tank Regiment. And I imagine he's getting a considerable bollocking after this. It's enough to be court-martialed over it, I don't know, but whatever, that's their deal. But Gaijin Entertainment themselves reached out to the army to ask, should we have this? And the Army Ministry of Defense come back to go, no. Take that shit down. If you continue to disseminate these documents, it's a violation of the Official Secrets Act. 14-year prison sentence. So Gaijin Entertainment are like, to get rid of this shit. Fear Not received a warning and the thread was closed, and that's, I guess, basically the end of it. Gaijin Entertainment then had their own thing to basically say, before we ever alter anything in the game or bring in new tanks, aviation, whatever, we always check that the documentation and our sources are in the public domain, right? They're not using classified military documents, basically. So it's just classic internet forums. Anyway, and then the last one, before I click into it, prepare your eyes for some pain, more or less. So Dark Souls scrolling texture mod chooses violence. So here is a mod by Drop Off, and it's basically changed all of the texture mods in Dark Souls to scroll, and it is something. it is something else. Play a video of it too, why not? With all of the textures scrolling. This is terrifying. It's just, I'm playing in a game of soup. All of the enemies even have their own scrolling mods, I think, or scrolling textures rather. I think the only thing that doesn't scroll or doesn't have a scrolling texture is the main player, or the player rather, the chosen undead. This is the opening sequence of Dark Souls, if you're not familiar, and it's not meant to look like this. It's not meant to scroll like this. Although interestingly, the light maps are not baked in. It's real-time lighting. So otherwise, the actual lit part of the texture would be the same. It would move with the texture, but it's not. So that's interesting. It's just something to point out from a game engine standpoint. Even the rats have scrolling textures. My God, it's fucking hideous. I think there's an actual gameplay video of it later on, so you can get a look at what it's actually like to attempt to play the game where the textures all scroll. I guess it's fine if you rotate the camera at the same speed that the textures are scrolling at, that you're probably alright. But yeah, you're basically playing Dark Souls in Dreamland kind of thing, and it's just terrifying. And if you want to check it out, there is a link in that article There's a link in that article if you want to try to fight the enemies while you're at it. I'd be curious how the bigger bosses look with their scrolling textures. The smaller enemies, it's a little hard to tell, and YouTube compression obviously destroys a lot of this because YouTube doesn't like moving things. So this is probably not the best showcase for it. In-game obviously will be the best showcase, but anyway. That's the news for 12th to 18th of July 2021. Again, coming from you from hell, more or less. It's so hot. Wow. Just looking at, you can't even tell where the corner is to try to move on that. That's terrifying. Anyway, let me know what you thought. Steam Deck, I'll probably wait on it, but I imagine if it actually does get Valve support, then I will probably jump on it, because my PC, typically, I don't really play PC games on my PC, but I really want to. The reason I don't is because it's usually taken up by either recording something or rendering something. Or just general browsing when I'm not actually interested in playing something at the time. So having the Steam Deck would be nice to just have its own thing where I can just play PC games on it, and it's not also my render machine and my record machine and so on. It would also make recording PC games much easier, because it's a considerable burden on the PC to both play the game and record it at the same time. So you don't always get the best fidelity of gameplay, and it does hitch every now and again, which obviously isn't great from a viewer standpoint. It's not great from a player standpoint either. So that's something to look into, but I'm not sure if I would want to get a Steam Deck exactly, and not just a standalone PC. You know, just a second PC that is literally just my game PC, and that's it. I don't do anything else with it. That's what I've always wanted. But you know, I can't afford to have a PC that's powerful enough to do decent rendering and recording, and then also have a PC that is powerful enough to play decent games. Like, I don't have the money to have two separate machines for that. They kind of have to be the same machine. And what tends to happen is I don't play the games. This is what tends to happen. So I'm interested to see if the Steam Deck will fill that niche for me, and if whatever way the pricing structure looks on it. Like, if it's a case there I could just get a gaming laptop to do the deal, maybe? I don't know. It's something we'll have to look at. And then some games getting delayed. It's not exactly surprising. The Netflix gaming deal, we don't really know too much about it. We just know, the only thing we know for definite is that they've hired somebody for game development, or president of game development. You know, we don't have any news of them hiring game developers. We don't have, like, someone has updated their LinkedIn profile to say they're working on Netflix games or whatever. So we don't know, like, that kind of thing. And then the whole data mining with PlayStation and Netflix, again, it's uncorroborated. Netflix haven't come out to say that it's an official thing, so it remains a rumor. An interesting rumor, but a rumor nonetheless. EA and FIFA continuing to just be money sinks. Unsurprising. I forget what the other stories were. The Ubisoft being shitheads. Yeah, it's like, how many Ubisoft are shitheads articles have we seen on the weekly news roundup at this point? So that's probably not particularly different. Elsewhere on the channel, you can see that stuff coming up. I have started the A Plague Tale Innocence Let's Play. So part 1 is already up on the channel. If you want to check that out, it's there with and without commentary, just in case you just want to see how the game plays, or just enjoy the game without me making terrible jokes over it. That, you know, you are, you know, perfectly fine if you want to do that. I don't have an issue with it. You know, it's not. I won't be put out if you prefer the no commentary version. Let's put it that way. A view is a view, so it doesn't bother me too much. As long as you leave a comment, I guess, to say that you liked it, maybe, or just like it. That you can do it that way. Also, I have finished recording. Sorry, I finished writing the script and will be recording the commentary for Games of March. So I'm hoping that's usually the worst part, honestly, of making those videos. So once that's done, I can get into like editing and so on. So I'm hoping that video will be out at some stage next week, maybe Wednesday. By next week, I of course mean this week, because when this video goes up, it is the week after, because I record on Sunday, whatever. And you can see, you probably saw that Returnal was back on the block for next games. Again, not entirely sure if that will actually happen. I need to actually go back and check what games actually came out in April. For the Games of April stuff, Resident Evil Village did. And I had been holding off on buying it in the hopes that it would get a sale drop at some stage, but that has not happened, so I'll probably just have to bite the bullet and buy it. Anyway, the Games of April hopefully will be a little bit faster. I've just stopped trying to play massive chunks of the game, and I'm just mostly just going to be giving my opinions on like the early starts of the game, because Games of March had Yakuza Like a Dragon and Atelier Ryza 2, which are both really long JRPGs. Sorry, Atelier Ryza 2 is a JRPG. Yakuza Like a Dragon it's set in Japan, but it's not really a JRPG. Anyway, they're both huge ass games, so I've basically only been able to give my opinions on the opening couple of hours, which probably don't amount for much because some of those games go on for hundreds of hours. Anyway, I'm pretty much just gonna have to do that, I think. It's just so I can try to catch up, and maybe I'll be in time for Games of September, possibly. Hopefully, we'll see, because that's when the games industry sort of wakes up again and starts releasing more games. Anyway, thanks for watching this, guys. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you next time.